back to Startup Cincy Week. For the next 2 hours, I'll be your guide. My name is Mark Wood, and I lead Fintech Frontier for Centrifuge. For those who are new to Centrifuge, we're a nonprofit located here in Cincinnati, backed by public entities, as well as large corporations, with the expressed mission to help tech-based startups win in Cincinnati. Fintech Frontier is our effort to focus resources around our fin and insurtech entrepreneurs here in the city. But more on that later. We've got quite a full agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. To kick off our afternoon session of Fintech, we're going to start by taking a deep dive into a story about how a Cincinnati Big Co. partnered with an early stage insurtech and what happened afterwards. But I can talk to you all day about why this is a great place to build a Fintech. It just sounds a whole lot better when it comes from the founders themselves. So with that, we have 4 gentlemen joining me here on stage, and they're going to take you through this story. To my direct left is Matt Green, AVP of Strategic VC for Western Southern Financial Group. To his left is Ben Foch, VP of Digital Strategy for Western Southern Financial Group. Working the way down the stage here, David McFarland, who is the co-founder and CEO of Coterie Insurance. And on the far end is Kevin Mackey, the co-founder and COO of Coterie Insurance. So with that, David, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, thanks. What we thought we'd do is start off a little bit and give a little background on the founding story of Coterie. I'm not from Cincinnati, and I don't understand Skyline Chili, but it's something that I'm at least becoming accustomed to. Before Coterie, I helped start a personal lines insurtech called ClearCover, and I didn't really know anyone at all in Cincinnati except one person, and I came here, was really evaluating various cities on where to start Coterie, and I was fairly warmly received. Turns out that Midwesterners are very nice and open with their calendars if you invite them with coffee. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah. And when I got here and we were starting up, and for those who don't know, we do commercial insurance. We really focus on small commercial and delivering insurance where it's relevant to the end consumer and using technology to do that. But when I was here and kind of starting off, not knowing anyone, we received really well by the startup community, and this included some of the big co's. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben, and he can highlight how Western and Southern found Coterie.
Thanks, David. So I think it was around the end of summer 2018, if my memory serves me, there was an article about an entrepreneur coming to Cincinnati to start an insurtech. As soon as I saw that line, I said, well, this is exactly why we built a strategic venture capital unit out of Western Southern Financial Group, which Matt will tell you a little bit about in a moment. That was incredibly interesting. I start reading through the article, and it says embedded insurance. Well, that was something we were very focused on. It starts talking about gig economy and potentially some opportunities there, as well as serving small businesses. All 3 of those were 3 of maybe the top 10 things we were targeting as strategic investors. So I reached out, and it turns out David was quite open with his calendar as well. So we met a couple of times. We started going through deep spreadsheets. David has an actuarial background. I have a bit of an engineering background. So we're geeking out on spreadsheets, then have a chance to meet some more of his team with Kevin. I think we grabbed coffee, and with Tim Metzner, and kept liking their team more and more. Had a few members of our executive team get to know the Coterie team, understand the business model. We like the business model. We like the opportunity. But ultimately, when you're investing at the seed stage, you're investing in entrepreneurs, and we couldn't be happier and prouder to invest behind David, Kevin, Tim, and the Coterie team.
And likewise, granted, when you're at the seed stage, you're kind of like, whoever will give me money, please. But our philosophy has always been from the beginning, culture first, and we overinvest in culture. Maybe we appropriately invest in culture, but this means our investors too, and we've been really fortunate to be able to have investors who are consistent with our vision, both in terms of where we want to take the business as well as how we develop the culture. Anything?
Sure. Hello. This is kind of weird to not have an audience here, and we're prompting ourselves, but just a couple of comments from me on that. Having been a multiple-time startup founder, culture is the most important thing that we can give to our teammates, and it usually is the intangible factor that is going to either allow for us to succeed or not. And so just kind of coming back to the founding story, when David and I met, and him not knowing anyone from the city of Cincinnati, our first 45 minutes, we're not talking about Coterie. And I'd seen his spreadsheet. It was 94 tabs. I'm not kidding. It was the longest and most detailed spreadsheet I've ever seen. But we didn't get into that. We talked about business philosophies. And I do remember even a discussion specifically on how we felt about marketing spend, when to have marketing spend, how to even view ROI. These were not things that we were talking about specific to Coterie. These were things that we were talking about from a business perspective. So being able to align around that from the very origins of the company, and then having Tim, who inherently, I think, got what we were after anyway, it made an excellent founding foundation upon which we've continued to build, and then having great investors and support from the community, and everybody else has been along with it. So with that, I don't know, I'll turn it back over to the Western and Southern folks so you guys can talk about culture.
Yeah, and maybe Matt will speak a little bit about the culture of the strategic venture capital group he leads, and what that is, and then maybe you guys can step back and describe Coterie and small business insurance, because I think that might be a new space for a number of folks.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So this relationship and investment we've had with Coterie has been a huge success for Western and Southern, and also with our relationship and investment in Centrifuge. These are good relationships that can really help the city of Cincinnati and really help the fintech community, so we can get more startups and see more success stories here in the Cincinnati area. So just a background on Western and Southern Strategic Venture Capital, that Ben did a tremendous job of help getting started at Western and Southern. So really a few years ago, 2016, 2017 timeframe, Ben and our leadership team thought it'd be a good idea to kind of track and monitor these early stage insurtech companies, because this can be as a defense mechanism for a large insurance companies such as Western and Southern to really get to know these organizations and invest and partner with them. So Western and Southern really took initially a very much, I would describe as a crawl, walk, run approach, and that we started off our strategic venture capital initiative by investing in funds. And as we invested in these funds, we got to know the insurtech community. We got to know and talk with more startups such as Coterie, and just really build our corporation's confidence in working with the startup community. So as we got to know and got comfortable with investments in startups, we started talking with more and more, doing more direct investments, finding successful companies such as Coterie, and we really began to ramp up our strategic venture capital initiative, and has really turned in to a good department for our organization, and helps us defend ourselves going forward in the future. So we'd probably do 4 to 5 direct investments on an annual basis. We'll typically target early stage companies. I would describe it as seed to Series A is the investments we work best with. We have some flexibility in there. We're not as stringent as I would describe as a typical VC fund LPA mandate, but it does give us some flexibility. And one thing I want to emphasize, any company that is in the fintech space within the Cincinnati community, I would encourage you to reach out to us, because this has been a great relationship from both just a commercial perspective as well as an investment return perspective for our company. So I would encourage everyone to do so. I'll go ahead and hand it off to you guys if you guys want to talk more about Coterie.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. Cincinnati is, I don't want to say unique. I don't know every city. But Cincinnati is at least special in that the big co's here seem to be getting behind the startup community pretty well. I know Great American, Western Southern, and many others are putting a lot of effort into getting into that, and we felt it, and we felt it directly from a number of big companies here, and obviously with your support. In general, for those who don't know, we do not cater to big companies. Coterie caters to the smaller end of small commercial. We like to support the solopreneur, whatever you want to call that. Solopreneur, that's a thing. Gig economy, small businesses, those types of players. Because, I mean, really, like, the small commercial space is the backbone of this country. And candidly, the PNC commercial insurance, I won't talk about life insurance, but PNC commercial insurance, it doesn't do a great job at making efficiency a thing in their life. And this may sound shocking to people who aren't in insurance, or at least to people who are in insurance. No one really cares about insurance, right? Like, I'm an actuary, and you can't bother me to, like, go shop for car insurance on a Saturday. It's not going to happen. And we take that thesis and we say, all right, since people don't actually care about insurance, how can we make this much easier for them in their life? And we do that by meeting them in the places where it's relevant to them, so that they can knock off that checkbox during the course of their life, rather than having to do this disparate activity that is filling out tons of forms for commercial insurance. And we do this not by disintermediating anyone, not by kicking out agents or brokers or any other distribution partners. We do this by empowering them. We actually go get the information for them so that agents, brokers, those who are selling the insurance can focus on what they're good at, namely like relationships and coverage recommendations, rather than on filling out a bunch of data and admin work, all that. We handle that behind the scenes. So that's kind of the special thing that we do at Coterie, and thankfully it's been working pretty well. We've we've had some good success this year, and we hope to continue to grow it in the coming years.
Just to add a couple more points to that, especially because my perspective on this, I'm not an insurance person by background. I'm a startup person. I'm founder. I'm entrepreneur. So I was the person that was buying these insurance policies. And so maybe many in the audience can understand and empathize with this. Sometimes you don't know what your projections are going to be. If you're asked for 4 or 5 years out and you're like, I don't know, maybe it's going to be this or maybe it's going to be that, that can impact your insurance policies and what you're protecting yourself for. So if we're able to digitize and use the information that on an itemized basis is going into your revenues, into your accounting books, so we can say this is what our revenues are, this is what our expenses are, not only can we eliminate that hassle that David was just talking about, but we can actually have more accurate pricing. And that is our goal. Our goal is not to be the lowest cost price. It is actually to be the most accurate price, because with accuracy comes education. And that's what we find that a lot of small business owners don't really understand is, what have I just bought? What am I able to do with this? And so by using a digital first and a data first orientation, and us being these owners ourselves, we can really deeply understand what we're trying to provide for not only our policyholders, but then the stat is still 90+% of these small business owners are still buying their policies through insurance agents. So we have to understand what the buying process is for all of those that are involved, and then build products accordingly. And so it's been a really awesome exercise to kind of help solve, for me, my own problems, but more importantly, to hear directly from our small business owners and our agents, because our agents are small business customers too. They have the same problems as our small business owners, just in a specific industry. So being able to solve all those problems has been really exciting.
If I could maybe call out a little band modesty on stage. So first, I think David said doing reasonably well. I think there was a press release earlier this week around a $50 million fundraise, which is fantastic. And so would love to hear a little bit about that, but then how you think about scaling culture, because you talked to that. And before that, just flag, there's a little additional modesty on stage. Matt talking about leading strategic venture capital and continuing on and accelerating. He talked about crawl, walk, run. And now the pace that Western and Southern's doing strategic venture capital, it far exceeds what was going on when I was leading it a few years ago. And I think it's a testament to Matt coming in and taking over the reins there. With that, what's going on with the fundraise and scaling?
So we're super excited to bring in the funds. Yeah, it was a $50 million raise. We had the press release go out on Tuesday. Obviously, the bulk of the credit goes to the team, right? The team has put in so much blood, sweat, and tears to make this work, to get the growth rates and to attract the investors. So big shout out to them. As far as what we plan to do with it, obviously, right, like continue to grow the business, make sure we can maximize return for our shareholders. But our core belief in that is, like, we have to have that team in order to execute on the vision. And so investing in culture, investing in the things that matter in terms of hiring, developing, and the hard thing, firing, right, when it doesn't work out. But really, again, investing heavily in coaching our teammates, making sure that we're able to understand what they want to do with their life and how that aligns with Coterie, and sometimes maybe it doesn't. And we have those conversations with our team. We coach them. We have a program called Core Coaching that we invest heavily into. Everyone's core coached, and that foundation of empathizing with your people and helping align their interests and their ambitions with where the company's going, and maybe sometimes where it may diverge, but understanding that beforehand really helps us build a company that is consistent with our core values of integrity, humility, passion, and intelligence.
The way that I would describe it a little bit is, we're going to get big, but we still want to feel small. And so I'm glad that David brought up core coaching, because core coaching, it is a program, as he had mentioned, that's designed for the person and the professional, but it also is a means of communication. If our leaders are so understanding what our strategy is, and that is consistent, it means that we can pass that feeling along to each one of our employees. And that, from a management perspective, is what we want to build. In the past couple of years, really in the past year, we've doubled in size, actually a couple of times, which is no small feat when you're doing all of this remotely. And so all of the learnings that we've had from a remote company, a small company, we're actually putting those things into practice. And we, as the initial leaders of the company, are able to say, I've done this before. I understand what you're doing. And that degree of empathy actually results, I think, in good performance and people that choose to stay. Right now, it is an environment where talented people have options. And when they make that choice to stay and do the work every day, hard work, there's so much value in that. And we want to reward our team for that.
So you guys just mentioned something I think it'd be great for the audience to hear from a startup perspective, and that's the amount of talent that exists in the Cincinnati community today. So I think one of the things that Cincinnati is a much more successful, smaller city in terms of the amount of talent and successful startups that exist here. And I would say we're a little underrated compared to some of the larger cities, even 90 miles up the road in Columbus. But I would love to hear your perspective on just your guys' ability to find good, strong talent from a recruiting perspective here in our local community.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of this has to do with the concept of ecosystems, right? And very mature ecosystems that have had a lot of startup success get to, you end up benefiting from the talent that has gone through there. They've grown up. They've seen how to scale a company from 0 to thousands of people. And then an exit scenario happens and they get to go through again. And this happens over and over again, creates more and more talent, right? The most mature ecosystem in the country, San Francisco, right? Clearly, Silicon Valley. However, now that time has gone on, we've found more ecosystems starting to take place. Some are more mature than others. Columbus, Cincinnati, those types of places. And I think Cincinnati is at a really interesting point right now. We've had a number of startups that have come through. Some have succeeded, some have failed. But it's like tilling the soil, right? It's breaking things up, and it's making it a really fertile place to where if you do have a startup, you can attract talent who has either gone through a successful startup or maybe has gone through failures, and you can learn from that. So yes, it was one of the reasons why I was bullish on coming to Cincinnati to start here.
There was one point where in one of your slide decks, I'm going to see how well you remember your slide decks from like Seed or Seed Plus, where you had a slide and it said the number of founders that we had and the number of collective years of experience. Do you remember what the answers were?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends, because like we were hiring some people, so I kept having to update it. I think we had 6 previous founders, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that was right. So a couple of shout outs. Jane Smith, who was one of our earliest employees, she had been involved in the local ecosystem. She went through the Ocean Accelerator with her brother John. She was able to join us as a very early employee. She had been the chief operating officer at that company. We've had Mike Hillenmeyer, who's had multiple founder experiences, and many others who I'm not going to be able to remember now. But the whole point being, we were able to attract these people who, again, made that choice. We were never going to be able to offer them what they could have made in the open market. And that's actually what they wanted. They wanted the experience. They wanted to do more. And those are the types of people that we found in spades here in the city of Cincinnati. And that's why we got started here.
If I don't mean to hog the questions for you guys, but I'd be very curious if you guys could share a little bit more about your story from a raising capital perspective. Like, obviously, we were investors in Coterie, and that's worked out pretty successful for us. But just your ability to kind of navigate the capital resourcefulness here in maybe the local Cincinnati community. I know if you guys have raised a successful amount of capital from other locations. Would just love to hear kind of your story on how you guys have progressed on that front.
Yeah, my capital raising story is not very attractive at all. I mean, basically what I do is I just make a Excel list of 80 to 100 different companies, and then I bother all of them until they either tell me yes or no, and that's frankly it. But there's a lot of resources out there. And I think you just got to do the hard work, right? Like there's no real secret to fundraising other than like occasionally like timing really works out for you, right? Like both in terms of internal timing, like your company's doing well, and external timing, meaning everyone is interested in InsurTech or whatever. Fortunately for us, that worked out really well this particular round. But shoot, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's still just going back to the, create a sheet of 100 investors who or who are interested in the space. Find the people who can connect you to the right people. By the way, big shout out to Sarah, Ben, many other people here in the Cincinnati space who have helped us get connected to those people. And then you just pitch. You pitch. And you know what? Like 99% of the time, they're going to say no because that's their job, right? Like your job is to find the reason that you should not invest, right? And that's okay. Like if you should not go into fundraising if you don't have a little bit of thickness to your skin, because you will be told no 99% of the time. And I'm literally saying this as we came off a $50 million fundraise, right? And I think that's the secret. It's not all like glamour and PR and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of hard work, both in terms of my pitching, but more so like the team behind us, like what they have done to make my job easier, right? So I can pitch something that's amazing. Like that credit goes to them.
These are going to be a little bit more tactical and probably chief operating officer-ish, which shouldn't surprise you at all. But here are a couple of things in the city of Cincinnati that helped us out. First and foremost, and this is going to demonstrate David's humility, but we're in an insurance town and we've got an insurance leader. That helped. That helped with angel fundraising tremendously, because we have a group of people, mostly, and this is going to be a very generic comment, but a lot of your angels are going to be, especially in a city like Cincinnati, former executives, folks that know deeply what the problems are. We didn't have to spend a lot of time convincing anyone about what we were trying to do. And that, to your point, Ben, is what initial investment is all about, is have you been able to prove and convince others that you deeply understand the problem in an industry and you're presenting a solution that is decades in the making. And that's what we were able to do successfully, but that was only for one round. Then you have other rounds that come out on top of it. So that's where you do have to use your team and the assets that are around you to be able to tell that compelling story, but most importantly, and this is the COO aspect of it, you have to be able to back it up. The first piece of this is convincing someone to say yes. The second piece of it, as Adam Newman well knows, is that you have to go through a diligence process and have people look at your company and be like, you know what, you're actually doing the things that you said that you're going to do. So for us, and this is Morgan Smith, major shout out, but to Morgan's consternation right now, our/my file storage system was based on me being the only person at the company initially and setting up our contracts the way that we were. In diligence, and this is what the most basic thing that I can communicate out to the audience is that when you go through diligence, investors want to see every document that your company has ever signed. And I'm not exaggerating. It's every single one. And so being able to set yourself up initially so that you don't have to go back through and, course through your emails and see, is this the signed version or not? Like that actually helped tremendously in terms of the speed through which we were able to go through fundraising. Since we still have 7 minutes left, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story on how that mattered to us. Our Series A, we closed, I think it was literally 2 weeks before the school shut down for COVID. And so why I'm saying that is we had started that fundraise in like August of the year before. It was a fundraise that took a solid 8 months. And that was still with us having documents and everything in place. If we had not had that and we had a delay, which as everyone that has fundraised knows, if you're talking with lawyers and attorneys have questions, a 2-week delay could be nothing. I mean, that could be something based on a contract that you didn't even know about. For us to be able to have that and get that money was tremendously helpful for us. So just having precision, being able to kind of maneuver the things, using your assets to your advantage, all of these subtle things are really what matters to closing a fundraise fast and having the best partners that you can get.
Hey, and maybe if we could stay with you, Kevin, for folks listening and thinking about the Cincinnati ecosystem, so we walked in together, and immediately you're starting to say hi to everybody you know, and it's ridiculous. I feel like I know nobody. I know you've been around the block. You were at Centrifuge a little bit. What do you think are the keys to getting involved in the Cincinnati ecosystem and getting awareness of what all the opportunities are and networking?
Don't have any doubt about yourself, truly. I mean this, everybody in this room is kind of in the same space, meaning we're all trying to do something big, we're all trying to benefit ourselves, we're all trying to do something that we're interested in. It doesn't really matter to me whether we've raised $50 million or we've raised $5, because we're all trying to do the same stuff. So I would say don't have any doubt about where you are and just begin to get involved and tell people what you are doing. Only other people, as you educate them about your business, can help you. And so if you're kind of holding back from yourself, you're actually holding back from others. And so what I would say is just forget about all the other stuff, all the blustery PR things like we've talked about, and just talk to people passionately about what you're interested in.
I'll echo that. Also, inviting Ohioans to coffee really works well.
That does. That's right.
So I think we're coming up on our close. The only thing I would add here to those startups that are listening, that this has been a great relationship for both parties, but from a capital resource perspective, there is capital here in the local Cincinnati community that's willing to invest in the Cincinnati community. So I'd encourage you to use your resources that are available, like Centrifuge, like Western and Southern, like Coterie, who'd probably be willing to help anyone out with their story and provide their perspective and be of help to any startup with here in the local Cincinnati community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're here to build up the Cincinnati ecosystem in general, and reach out. There's a lot of startups out here who want to do something special, and happy to help them.
Same, and I've been given the task of wrapping us up, so I think that maybe we're in the wrap-up phase of this. So with that, Western, do you guys want to end with any, or Ben specifically, do you want to end with anything else? Otherwise, I think we're going to kick off to Fintech Frontier pitch competition.
Just echo that especially if you're in the fintech landscape, but otherwise as well, if you're local and raising money, certainly reach out to Matt and others at Western and Southern.
All right, so with that, we are going to kick it back off to the Fintech Frontier. There's going to be a series of startups that are going to pitch for us, so that's super exciting. I will echo what David said. You can reach me anytime, Kevin@CoterieInsurance.com. We are seriously passionate about building up the local ecosystem, local talent. If you're ever up in the Blue Ash area, we have plenty of space on most days of the week. So truly, feel free to get in touch. Happy to mentor anyone that we need. Otherwise, Centrifuge crew, it is off to our Fintech Frontier commercial.
A thriving startup community is important for Cincinnati because Cincinnati has always been a driving force for innovation throughout our history. Cincinnati, again, is ripe to be that engine to help drive innovation in this ecosystem. We have great universities, we have great companies to all fuel that energy, and so when that technology comes about and the new innovation comes about, you can feed those directly into the large corporations that touch the world every single day.
Having a thriving startup community in Cincinnati is critical for our long-term economic vitality. As an individual and a working mother who moved here after almost 2 decades living and working in Manhattan, I found myself in Cincinnati. And you might ask why. Well, let me tell you a little bit about this place. First, it's the heartbeat of the nation. When you come to a community like Cincinnati and the greater Cincinnati region, what you find is everyone is willing to help. And it's why I brought my family here. It's why I moved my career here. USA Today ranked us as one of the top places for millennials to live. The second year I moved here from New York City, the New York Times had us in the top 10 list of the 52 places to visit in the year.
We have a half a dozen Fortune 500 companies, and 3 of those are financial services and insurance. You've got companies like Procter & Gamble and Kroger, who are at the epicenter of retailing, branding, and customer understanding. And companies like these, they're going to be your customers, your investors, your mentors.
So customers, talent, and money are the 3 things that a startup needs. And you'll find all of those here in Greater Cincinnati. So in this instance, if you want to talk about fintech, we've got a concentration of insurtech and fintech here, from Western Southern, Cincinnati Financial, Fifth Third Bank, US Bank, PNC. They all have a significant presence here in the Greater Cincinnati region.
A lot of companies these days do lean on startups. And specifically within fintech, there's a big trend for financial services companies to lean heavily on partnerships with fintechs. And a good startup ecosystem of domain expertise, technical expertise, kind of pushing the boundaries into what's new, is ultimately the future wave of how big corporations are going to continue to evolve and invest into new technology and new ecosystems. The corporations that are headquartered here, Fortune 500 kind of focus, they bring a lot of talent into the city and they stay here.
Centrifuge is a startup catalyst that combines services for startups, a syndicated fund of funds of about $115 million in invested capital, and services for big companies that help them think and act like a startup. I'm a California native. In fact, I went to school in the Silicon Valley. I decided to locate my company in Cincinnati because the advantages are absolutely tremendous. Cost of living, supportive ecosystem, access to talent, access to big companies that are hungry to do pilots.
There's no better place to invest in the United States than in the Midwest right now.
We are looking for great startups that want to be part of our community, about building our region, but also about building our business.
So I would recommend any entrepreneur that wants to be able to start a business in a place that isn't going to break your bank and also has a tremendous ecosystem around it and can give you your work-life balance. Cincinnati is definitely the place for you to consider.
Aspiring fin and insurtech entrepreneurs out there, come to Cincinnati. We'll welcome you with open arms and we'll do everything we can to help you ramp up really, really fast.